what it means for business in simple terms. What's the impact on business in terms of operational wise or financial wise?
So we'll take that in two chunks then. So let's look at it from a business perspective.
For the benefit of the users, we are going to explore more into ransomware attacks and how this normally happens and how do we prevent this and is there a way out?
They were spent over 7 million euros in
God.
recovery just for unable to access data.
Hi Toby, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing today?
Very well.
Okay, welcome to UAE.
Thank you very
I
much.
trust you're enjoying the UAE hospitality.
Very much so. Absolutely wonderful, yeah.
How's the weather?
Hot. It's double the heat here than it is in the UK.
Okay.
Double.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Okay.
very nice.
Okay. To just give a small introduction to our viewers.
So, yeah, my name's Toby Sleight. I'm a Cybersecurity Specialist in the UK. I've been working in cybersecurity for about 25 years. And I currently work with Rico, where I've been working with them for 5 years now to build a cybersecurity practice.
Fantastic. Okay. I'm sure you might be traveling across the globe and seeing a lot of these topics happening in all corners of the globe.
Yeah.
Today, if you just look at any budgets in any organization,
Okay.
the cybersecurity budget leads on top of everything.
Yes,
So
it
this
does.
has become a business critical priority for all the organizations. Is it true in all the other regions as well?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that, there's obviously there's a balance, isn't there, between securing an environment, but also keeping it available to being used. We can secure a lot, but if we secure too much, it becomes unusable. So there's a big balance with what we do for security. But security budgets are tight because everything's so expensive, especially experience is a big problem. Okay. Yeah, the personnel is just not around. So we have to rely on partners and we have to rely on organizations to help us come up with the best defenses.
Fantastic. For the benefit of the users, we are going to explore more into ransomware attacks and how this normally happens and how do we prevent this and is there a way out for all of us to come out of this? Because the more of internet over things is happening, so every endpoint is becoming very vulnerable. So not sparing any individual, going into SMBs, corporates, governments, corporation, nobody's been spared into the ransomware. Okay. The moment we hear the word ransom or ransomware attack, it's a very unpleasant situation for all of us.
Correct.
So we're going to explore more into that, and then we would like you to share what are possible things that it could be benefiting our viewers.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, no problem.
So let us start from the overview of the ransom attack section. Yeah, how have they typically unfold?
So let's look at what a ransomware attack is. A ransomware attack is the basic need to encrypt the data. Once the data is encrypted, it's no longer any good to you. And you need that data to go about business continuity and business as usual, right? So if my data is encrypted, my organization grinds to a halt, which means that I've got one of two things. I can either try and fix it, it's impossible, or I pay the ransom. And the ransom can be anything from 500,000 euros to 5 million euros. It all depends on the size of the organization. So the critical thing here is they want to encrypt the data as quickly as possible and cause the maximum amount of impact to an organization.
That's quite scary.
Yeah, very much so.
But how have they evolved over the period of time, the kind of technologies or the tools or the techniques or tactics that are being used? Because the ransomware has been one of the hottest topics, maybe in the recent times. I just want to know how have they evolved over a period of time?
I think if we look back to one of the first ones that hit the news was WannaCry, and we maybe talk a little bit about that in a bit more detail, but WannaCry was the big one. That was the kind of one that opened everybody's eyes that, hold on a minute, somebody's encrypted our environment and we can't access this. This was 200,000 people unable to work. Yeah, just by one ransomware attack. And the people that were behind it, it wasn't a large organization like it is today. It was a small organization, and they managed to grind to the whole, especially in the UK, the whole NHS service came to a standstill. So that's where it kind of started. That's where we saw the first, start of ransomware attacks. But has it evolved? It's evolved because these companies have then, obviously there's different variants out there now. There's so many different variants, but they're now becoming as big as the organizations that they're trying to attack. So to give you an idea, in the UK, we have to every year announce our profit and loss. Yeah. So how much money did we make as a business
Of course.
in this year, in this financial year? So the cyber criminals thought it'd be a great idea to do the same thing. And they announced, one cyber criminal gang announced 1 billion euros of income from a cyber criminal activity. So
Hope they don't go into public listing.
that's exactly right. Yeah, we buy shares in it. So yeah, that's kind of the involvement, is the fact that it started off like small little pockets of it. It's now you can go onto the dark web and you can pull down a ransomware variant for $20.
Oh.
So it's not difficult to get hold of a piece of ransomware. And you can also get it as a service. You can buy it as a service. But what we're seeing is it's not so much how it's evolved. And yes, the encryption methods are a lot more complex, but it's the scale that's the scary part. Okay. There's so much of it.
I can understand. Maybe we just need to know more about what are the common entry points. Is there any common entry points, or is it every IP is vulnerable?
So, absolutely, yeah. So nobody's really safe. Yeah. And there are so many tactics that we can use to try and, secure our environments. And, if you're looking from the outside world, because that's where it starts, they are going to pick away at vulnerabilities. They're going to pick away at access points that they can get into. And then once they're in, they'll lie dormant for a while. It might be a week, it might be a month, it might be a year that they'll lie dormant, and then they'll execute. And the execution, as far as a ransomware is concerned, is to get that encryption done as quickly as possible to as much as possible, causing the most amount of impact.
Very scary. Do you think any IP, in case I say that there could be a small desktop printer in an office, do you think it could happen through a printer?
Of course. So let me give you an example. And this was one that I was involved with post-breach, unfortunately. If we'd have been there beforehand, maybe we'd have, stopped the pain that the customer went through. But there was a very large casino group in the US. Okay. And this goes to show that it's not just a user's environment that's at risk here. So also IoT. So, anything with an IP address, anything that has connectivity to our network. So where their access point was a fish tank.
Oh.
So the fish tank was wirelessly connected because it had a thermometer. Oh. And they replaced the thermometer with a new thermometer that was pre-programmed with ransomware. So at some point, they triggered the ransomware attack off, and it brought the casino to a standstill. From a recovery perspective, it took them 8 weeks before they could transact again. 8 weeks in that kind of business is millions and millions and millions of dollars lost in revenue. So it doesn't have to be a user's PC with an unpatched PC. It could be anything that connects to the internet is a target. And they'll find an exploit. They'll find a way in, and they do that.
Oh my God! I can't even imagine a fish tank could be as vulnerable as possible, costing millions.
Yeah. In fact, some of the time, IoT is an easier target than a laptop because they're in the environment. They're whitelisted. Okay. If I've got access to that, I'm in. Yeah.
What it means for business in simple terms? What's the impact on business in terms of operational wise or financial wise?
So we'll take that in two chunks then. So let's look at it from a business perspective, an operational perspective first. So if you've been hit by a ransomware attack, it's safe to say that anything that has anything to do with data will be encrypted. You won't be able to use any of those systems. So from a user's perspective, I have no access to my files. I can't do my job. From a customer's perspective, one of the other things that they'll always go after are database servers. Now, if my database servers are encrypted, none of my databases none of my applications that are running in those databases are going to work. So what that means is let's look at a retail that transacts on the internet. Yeah, that if my application is down, the ability to trade is gone. Look at it from a banking app. If I have a banking app, if my application database is down, then I cannot use my banking app. So it has a bigger impact from a business perspective. And then if we then look at the financials, just from the cost of downtime alone, just for our users unable to work, there's a cost to the business because you're paying their salary and they're doing nothing for you. First thing. Second thing is obviously the loss of revenue, the loss of, you have the cost it takes to recover. So recovery, and I've seen this. I was working with an organization that was hit at Christmas Eve, They were actually still down for 8 months. They still didn't have back a lot of their data. And they were spent over 7 million euros in recovery just for unable to access data. So the cost is massive, and there are ways of calculating it, but also the cost of the business, because then you have reputational damage. If you're getting hit again and again because you haven't done the necessary steps to protect yourself and to stop these things from happening, then, you know, your reputation is going to go down down, and people will look elsewhere and not use you as a business.
I agree. To be just listening to you, I'm just thinking deep into that. Is there any specific segment or a vertical which these hackers or somebody who tries to attack, maybe it's in healthcare or it's financial sector, or is it any automation, or it could be hospitality, where there is always a customer interaction? Or do they have any specific targets, or do they do it by cash-rich verticals?
So anybody and everywhere is a target for ransomware. You know, even to the one user at home. You know, we've all seen, you know, somebody being targeted from a social media perspective or social engineering perspective. But also the large global enterprise, they're all a target. Everyone's a target because data is the most important thing to most people. You know, what you hold of my information on a server, that's critical to me. It's critical to you as a business as well. So if that gets encrypted and you have no access to it, it's a big problem. So yes, absolutely. I don't think there's any vertical that it doesn't really affect, but there's certain verticals that it'll affect more. And I think, you know, if we look at the top tier, I think healthcare for sure. And, you know, we can talk about healthcare, the finance sector as well. But one that I've seen a lot of is education. And I think the reason why education is a very good thing for them is because, as I said earlier on, we don't have a lot of expertise in cybersecurity. They get used up by the bigger companies. They get bought up and employed by these larger corporates. So the smaller organizations don't have a generalist, a specific person to deal with security. They'll have a generalist inside the organization. Yeah, there may be one or two, a very small team trying to do everything: infrastructure, security, you know, break, fix, and support. Now, with various tools, we can't continue to rely on our tools to do what we're doing, because this is the problem. Tools aren't enough. Prevention is not enough. So we need tools now that aren't admin hungry, but are more so there to capture us if we have a problem. But as what I'm saying is that no business is against it.
Safer. Okay.
And the more data you have on a person inside your organization, actually the more reason to attack you.
Okay, but today, for all the organizations, data is asset. So obviously, when the asset is becoming bigger, you're more vulnerable for any kind of attacks. For
sure, yeah. And, you know, there's so many different attacks. And, you know, if you look at how many attacks are happening globally for ransomware at the moment, it's ridiculous. I'll give you an idea of some of the scale of this. In 2022, we saw around 300 million ransomware attacks in the whole of 2022.
2022, this is post-pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then in 2023, the first half of 2023, we saw more ransomware attacks in the first half of 2023 than we did the whole of 2022. Oh. Now that trajectory is staying as it is, and it's increasing at a rate, you know, like that.
Okay.
To give you an idea of how many ransomware attacks are happening, one every 14 seconds we're seeing globally.
Oh, it's 14 seconds.
Every 14 seconds we see a ransomware globally, yeah. It's crazy, absolutely crazy amount. And how do you defend against that kind of constant, pressure to maintain an environment safety and data safety?
Okay. I'm just taking you one step behind, actually. When you say that from 2022 and 2023, there has been a steep hype on the kind of attacks. Is it because of the pandemic and then we all moved into a digital platform? Is that a reason where more and more people are exposed?
I think the pandemic really did help, you know, create a stir, because if you think post-pandemic, we were very much a static organization. You know, everybody was working from the office. We had desktops rather than laptops, you know. If you think about it like that, it was very static. You had your own desk. You were in the office, you worked, you went home, in general terms. Then pandemic hit. yeah? And if you think about that, everyone was sent home. Nobody is to come in the office. Everybody's sent home. Everybody's working environment then went home. So we're using broadband, not a secure data link. You're using username credentials to gain access to, I don't know, Teams or your email, because you didn't have to go through the domain. So unsecure, working from home, being agile, to an environment that is pretty open. So we started to see the influx again of more and more of these type of attacks happening. Look at it now, we've got this hybrid. You know, in the UK and in you know, a lot of the European countries, I've noticed that I've been visiting, is that they have a kind of hybrid. Monday and Friday, work from home, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, come into the office. But you don't have your own desk anymore. There's a lot of hot desking. There's a lot of that going on. So it's very difficult to secure, very, very difficult to secure that kind of environment. And this is brilliant for cyber criminals, because you're taking your own devices in. BYOD is a real problem, as we've mentioned. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges for security people, a lot of challenges.
Okay. The way I understand is the more and more devices are connected together,
yeah,
the more and more we are into risk.
Of course, yeah. And you don't know what's connecting to your network. Like I say, look at the fish tank. How would you test if it's clean or not before you're putting it in? How do you test when you plug in a USB stick? Is it clean before you plug it in? There's all sorts of things, you know? So, and if you look at the tools that we're running today, like EDR, like antivirus, like anything that we're running today, they're on the back foot. They really are on the back foot. And they are only too often being circumvented. And I can give you an idea there. So 64% of threats that have been reported don't actually get picked up by the security tools that we put in place. It's actually being picked up by our users. It's our users that tell us that there's a problem.
Okay.
So if it's our users that are telling us that there's a problem, we're kind of too late. Because if you think about that, right? I'm a user. I've gone onto my laptop. I've got my coffee, sat down, and I put my details in. And all of a sudden, this screen comes up and says, you can't access this data. Please pay me some money. First thing I'm going to do as a non-savvy techie user is I'll reboot my machine.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the first thing I'm going to do.
Yeah.
The second thing I'm going to do, because that's going to just carry on going, is shut it down. I'll go and have a coffee. I'll go and phone my mate. I'll come back to it in a minute. Fire it back up again, and it's still continuing to do what it does. It's still continuing to encrypt. It's still continuing to damage the internal data. Then I might phone IT. IT are inundated with other calls because they're busy. It might take me an hour to get through. By that time, we're 3 hours into a ransomware attack. 2 guys, it's too late. By that time, most organizations will be absolutely encrypted.
Encrypted, yeah.
40,000 files per minute on average. Some of the new variants that we're seeing, 40,000 files a minute get encrypted. It's mad. Wow. Crazy speeds. How do you prevent that?
But where does the ownership lie, Toby? Is it with the IT department, or is it with the users, or where do we draw the line?
I don't think there is a line to draw, because as an IT administrator, as a security person, we've got to make sure our environments are protected and secure, right? That's the first thing we've got to do. We've got to secure and safeguard our environment and our users. But it's also it's also our users. We've got to become a little bit more tech savvy. You know, do user awareness training. You know, do test email phishing, that kind of thing, because it's unbelievable some of the statistics that come out of phishing emails. I was actually involved in a phishing email, a project with a large corporate, and it was signed off by the CTO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All good. So the C-level knew that we were doing this. Okay. So then we fired this email off, and we did it a little bit clever. We made it look like a Costa freebie. Yeah. Okay. So click on this link, you get a free cup of coffee. Now, a lot of people clicked on it, but so did the C-level. So if we can make people do that, so can the cyber criminals. So yeah, even the C-level that signed it off to do it actually clicked on the email. So yeah. So I think it's a responsibility of everybody to be aware of what is going on. So don't click on this that you don't know. Look at where even if you look at an email when it comes in and you're expecting it to come in from james@something.com and it's not that, it's something that isn't quite right. So it's just being a little bit more aware. but companies need to help their users become aware. So it's a vicious circle for everybody.
Okay. So this turns into a kind of training and awareness, or
Absolutely.
a kind of education within our employees.
Absolutely. I think it's critical that employees get that kind of training from their customers, from their companies.
Organizations. Okay, great. That's very, very scary, I'm saying. It's just really scary about it, actually. Is there any preventive measures anybody can take or to protect the infrastructure against any cyber attacks?
So I think prevention is something that we have to do. Yeah. And if you look at how the cyber criminals are gaining access, as I said, they do these 3 stages. They do a recon. So they're looking from the outside world where your vulnerabilities are. What's my easiest into the organization? Once they're in, they then want to understand the organization. They want to gain as much access to internal networks of the organization. And they also want to maintain a connection out of the organization.
Okay.
Yeah. Once they've got all of that and they're comfortable, that might take them a month, it might take them 6 months. But once they've got all of that, they then can action the objective. And the objective is to encrypt everything. Databases, live data, backups, anything they can, anything with data. So that's kind of the process. So if we strip down that process, the first thing that we need to do as an organization is pen testing. And people don't realize how important pen testing is when it comes to prevention. Because the first thing we need to understand is, what do we look like from the outside world? Once we know that, then we can start plugging some of those holes. The second thing is, we need to make sure that our users aren't doing anything silly. So we have our perimeter and we have EDR. That's kind of covered. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah. In the middle of that, we need to protect our servers. So we need to have security on the servers. And there's many ways of we can do that. And one of the things, even with cybersecurity insurance policies now, they're saying that you have to secure your server environment for a policy to be, whether it brings the premium down or whether it gets a tick by it, there is, the need to secure that server farm. And then, as we know, it's still going to get through. Yeah, we're still going to see breaches, even by doing that, because we're doing that today.
Okay.
So we're still seeing 64% of those breaches being picked up by none of the stuff that we've just done. So we need that what if. We need a containment solution against ransomware. So if everything else fails, we've got something that will pick it up.
Okay, that's the last line of defense.
Last line of defense, absolutely. And, containment is something that isn't massively available or adopted, but it's definitely something that I think we'll see a lot of pull towards in the future, because ransomware is becoming such a big problem for everybody.
I'm just going to the next level, Toby.
Yep.
In case of an organization has been hit by a worse ransom attack, what kind of emotional or ethical considerations they go through before they paying to the attackers?
The problem is because business dictate, if you're losing money every second you're offline, the business isn't going to dictate that you do it. However, if you look at 80% of businesses are paying the ransom, look at that from a different perspective. Is it ethical to fund cyber criminal activity? Of course it's not. You wouldn't fund somebody pinching cars. Why would you fund somebody, trying to steal your data? Because that's in essence what they're doing.
But how do I get my data back?
Yeah, there's another thing, right? So let's look at that. You pay this money to the cyber criminals who don't care. Okay. All they care about is getting that money. Yeah, they've got your money and you're now asking for a decrypt key. Okay, so they give you a decrypt key. Now you take that decrypt key and you start to try and unravel the mess that they've created. And 40-50% of the time, you do not get all your data back.
Sure.
Absolutely. So what can you do then? There isn't a help desk that you say, hey, cyber criminal man, got a bit of a problem here. This decrypt key you've given me doesn't seem to work. Yeah, doesn't work like that. They don't care. And they'll wait there because you've probably spent so much time running around trying to fix the encryption, you've forgotten how they got in. So you haven't plugged that gap. So then they'll sit there lying dormant and waiting 6 months, 12 months. And they think, right, it's time. Hit you again. You got to go through the whole rigmarole again. And this is the problem with prevention. It gets circumvented too much. So we do need a last line of defense.
Okay, you mean to say that once an organization has been attacked, there's a high possibility there might be a reputation.
Oh, 100%. I worked with a school, just a very small school in the UK. Yeah. We had a phone call from them saying he'd been hit. Okay, no problem. So we looked into the issues, and vulnerabilities were there and all that kind of stuff. And again, students, they like to play around. They like to look at things they shouldn't be looking at. And, they got hit.
Okay.
So they plugged the gaps that they thought they were hitting, and they were putting in certain controls on laptops and all that kind of stuff. But because they were already inside the environment, they got hit again. They got hit, I think, something like 4 or 5 times, and they paid the ransom every single time. They were in the news with it. It was a real big breach, because every time they got hit, they sent the students home. They couldn't work. So, yeah, absolutely. You are more likely to be hit again and again and again until you do one or two things. One is run out of money. And I've seen that. I've seen companies go bankrupt because of ransomware attacks. Or you put in a last line of defense.
No, but it hurts after paying a whole lot of ransom. I don't get my data back.
Yeah. Oh, well, exactly. Yeah. So why not try and do something that stops that from happening? Okay. Why not have something there that will, protect that data, not just protect them coming in, because it doesn't matter how you get in. They're going to get in. They'll find a way in. If they want to get in, they'll get in. And one of the things we always say in security, it's not when you get hit. It's not if you get hit, it's when you get hit. Yeah, because invariably something's going to happen. So having something there as a last line of defense is critical nowadays. It really is, because as I said, we're on the back foot from a security perspective. All the tools that we're putting in place, they're on the back foot. They're just reactive.
Oh. Okay. Being one of the business leaders, normally we do a kind of strategy planning, looking at what kind of business do we do and what kind of risks we have and how do we mitigate the risk, what's the backup plans kind of thing.
Yep.
Is there a way out to mitigate the risk when it comes to cyber attacks?
No, there really isn't. From a prevention perspective, you can keep putting more tools in place, and, security is done today in different pockets, and we'll have endpoint security. So we'll put an endpoint tool in. We'll have network security. So we'll put the firewalls in place, and we'll put, email scanners and web gateways. We'll put those in place. And we have all these different onion layer to security. It's how we do it today. All organizations do the same thing. We have to continue to do that. But I think the way that we mitigate that risk is having that capture plan. That last line of defense is critical to having something there that when all this fails, my data is still protected. Because that is the key thing, is protecting that data. That's the key part of anybody's business, is the data, because that is what the cyber criminals want. They don't want a laptop or a server access. They want the data. They want to encrypt it.
No, it's very, very scary, I'm saying. But how does the future look, Toby? Because what is the future trend?
So trends in security. So we're definitely moving into a zero trust, right? And what I mean by that is that if I don't know what it is, I'm going to block you. Yeah, zero trust is a trend that we're all moving into.
Okay.
However, that comes with challenges, because zero trust could also mean problems for business continuity. But I also think containment is definitely there as part of one of those things that we'll see more of it, maybe not for ransomware, with other tools, but I think containment is a way forward for organizations to be protected and safeguard against future, because that's just the thing, right? If you think about it from an EDR tool or an antivirus tool, they've got to have seen it. They've got to have known about it. They've got to know what the signature looks like, the behavior of that threat looks like, the patterns. They need to know a lot of information before they can secure against it. With containment, we don't need to know about it.
Okay.
We can see when the bad stuff happens, and we can then isolate and act based on what we're seeing, not just waiting and guessing. And that's kind of what it is at the moment, because there's so many different variants that come out. And go back to what I said about EDR and trying to prevent against it. If you have an app or a device that hasn't got an EDR tool on it, how do you protect that? But also, if you look at the way that ransomware evolves, is that you have the variant, yeah, and then what happens is the EDR companies like Sophos, like CrowdStrike, they'll have a patch for that version, let's say. They'll understand that version, they'll be able to block it or stop it from happening. All the cyber criminals got to do is change that code a little bit, and it's a whole new variant, and they start that whole race again. Yeah, so that's, again, how do you prevent that? You can't. You need containment. Containment is the way.
We heard enough about containment solutions, and then we definitely agree the containment solution is the problem, which will be the last line of defense for today's cybersecurity attacks. Can you explain more in detail about the RansomCare product as it is?
For sure. So Rico RansomCare, powered by Bulwall, is a last line of defense against the ransomware attack. So what it's there to do is, when everything else fails, as I said, is there to contain the ransomware attack. And it does it very simply. It's a completely agentless solution, so it's very quick to deploy. And it doesn't matter whether it's a known ransomware variant or an unknown ransom variant. It's looking for the purpose of the ransomware attack to then start its containment process. Very quick and easy, and to date never been breached. So it's a very easy to install, very quick to get up and running, and very quick to be protected around that data protection from ransomware.
Okay, what happens to an IT manager says that he's already been protected with the AV, the current antivirus, or maybe the firewalls? Does it replace the existing system, or how does it work?
Absolutely not. So we're not looking to replace anything with this tool. This tool is there as that last line of defense. So, and we will work in conjunction with everything that you have there, be giving them more information about the breaches.
Okay.
Making sure that we're working together. The tools are working how they should be, but they're to capture it as well. So no, we don't replace anything, and we just sit there listening for changes in the environment. And when we see a change in the environment, we can react.
Okay, so this is a complement to the existing system.
Absolutely correct.
This is an additional layer for any kind of vulnerability.
Absolutely correct, yeah.
Oh, perfect. So what is the process the customer has to go through in case if I'm the customer? So if I want to put the last line of defense, add one more layer to my IT security protocols, what do I need?
So the first thing we do is we'll show you a demo, and during the demo we'll show you actually live ransomware attacks happening. And then we can actually test your environment. We can show inside your environment a ransomware attack happening.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is more than enough to articulate what we do, articulate the differences between prevention, which is what every organization is doing today, and what we're adding, which is that last line of defense, that additional layer that's missing. That's how the process works. And, the Middle East is a new market for us, and we're working with partners like Corporate Connection to penetrate into that market and show customers that are having sleepless nights around ransomware that there is another way to prevent these kind of attacks. So, yeah. Thank you for your assistance with that one.
Brilliant. I think now you gave us a kind of relief that there is a containment solutions where we can mitigate the risk, and then we can protect our assets as a last line of defense.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this was really, really deep. And thank you for sharing all your insights. And this was really knowledgeable for all of our viewers.
No problem.
And this was really, really insightful. And thanks for your time.
No, it's been a pleasure. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. Thank you.